In the midst of this coronavirus crisis, Christians can care both for those who are suffering and for religious liberty. In fact, we must care about both. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. This is Breakpoint. The media narratives that have emerged from the COVID-19 pandemic are varied. Some, like the lack of supplies for medical personnel and first responders, are very important. Others, like the stories about churches and their defiant pastors who refuse to comply with physical distancing and stay-at-home orders, well, they're mostly selective and overblown. Of course, there are churches and pastors behaving badly. A few, a very few, less than 1% in fact. To suggest that they're somehow representative of all Christians is both misleading and slanderous. Also, largely ignored in so many of these stories about these churches is the fact that in many towns, counties, and states, the stay-at-home orders are, well, confusing. Some might even be illegal. Understandably, many Christians struggle to know how to take the alarming headlines about pastors being arrested, and many churches and Christian ministries struggle to know how to carry out their mission at this time. Kristen Waggoner, vice president of the Alliance Defending Freedom, told me that ADF is now receiving about 100 calls a day from churches and other ministries about COVID-19 related issues that are asking for help in understanding and complying with federal, state, county, and municipal orders. That regulations are being issued at these 4 levels of government is just one of the potential problems. And the orders not confusing or inconsistent are at times being applied and enforced inconsistently or in ways discriminatory against the free exercise of religion. The most important thing to remember, as Kristen Waggoner stated emphatically during the podcast, is that First Amendment rights cannot be suspended permanently. That's why the threat from New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio to permanently close some churches after the crisis is manifestly absurd. 2 main requirements must be met for any infringement on religious freedom, including during a time of national or local emergency. First, any infringement must advance a compelling state interest. And second, it must be done in the least restrictive way possible. Now, what constitutes a compelling state interest will, of course, vary according to circumstances. For example, the government could have a compelling interest to limit how people can gather during an emergency, or even how many people can gather, though this would infringe on religious liberty. And that's what the Kansas Supreme Court ruled over the weekend. The orders, however, must be clear. A person should be able to understand what is and what is not restricted without having to hire a lawyer. According to Waggoner, many of the COVID-19 restrictions are failing this clarity test, especially at the local level. Unclear restrictions make inconsistent enforcement by government nearly inevitable. This is especially true when local officials have an agenda and see an opportunity to take advantage of a crisis and crack down on groups they don't like, including religious ones. For instance, in both Charlotte and Greensboro, North Carolina, in recent days, believers have been arrested for praying outside abortion clinics, even though they were obeying local distancing orders. Last week, the mayor of Louisville, Kentucky, inexplicably attempted to bar a church from holding a drive-in service, a service where no one gets out of their cars. A federal judge sided scathingly with the church, writing in his opinion that on Holy Thursday, an American mayor criminalized the communal celebration of Easter. That sentence is one this court never expected to see outside the pages of a dystopian novel or perhaps the pages of The Onion. Now, I was encouraged when Kristen Waggoner told me that most of the time, a simple letter written to state and local officials pointing out problems or seeking clarification in their orders is all it takes. The professionality of the Alliance Defending Freedom is one of their best tools, but they're pretty good in court too. Even in the best of times, guarding our First Amendment freedoms can be an uphill battle. And these are not the best of times. That's why I'm grateful that Kristen Waggoner and the Alliance Defending Freedom are there to help guide us through these confusing times. My interview with Kristen Waggoner airs today on the Breakpoint Podcast. Subscribe to the Breakpoint Podcast wherever you get your podcast, or come to breakpoint.org to listen. For Breakpoint, I'm John Stonestreet.